On the interview with me today, Aisha Faridi, I have someone who's at the helm of one of India's most powerful consumer brands. Please welcome the MD and CEO of Asian Paints, Amit Syngle. Amit, thank you so much for joining today on ET Now. And what a beautiful place this is, Nilaya. Just absolutely unique.
Yeah, first of all, I think a pleasure talking to you. And yes, this has been one of my dreams in terms of looking at what we make here. And this is more like a community in terms of what we are looking for, art and design lovers. It's also an international design center. Something very unique, which is not there in the world as a model to that extent. And we've been experimenting, and that's the core of Asian Paints, that we keep on really inventing, looking at new things and see what we can really make a mark with.
But this, as one calls it, is the premium of premiums, right? This is for the top-end consumer. Is this the spectrum that you focus in on? I mean, is there a strategy or thought behind it?
So, when you look at Nilaya Anthology obviously is super luxury in terms of how we are positioning. But apart from luxury, it is something which is about collections which are limited, which are very unique. It's collectible art. It is about curators who are not known across the world. It's about design confluence in terms of what we see, and this is really the top end in terms of how you see. But I think the great part with Asian Paints is that we straddle the entire pyramid. We have catering to something which is the what we call as the smart or the economy segment. We cater to the mid premium segment to that extent, the luxury segment, as well as the super luxury now. So it's like a pyramid. I think the endeavor at Asian Paints always has been that how do we kind of really moving the people up the pyramid, from the unorganized to the organized, and then from each of the layers you keep on lifting the people and getting them up in the pyramid to that extent. And that's the strength of the brand in terms of how it is overall, because one, of the sheer reach in terms of what we have, and secondly in terms of being with the consumer as a legacy brand over the years.
Absolutely. I want to get a little myopic here, and I want to just draw down to the last 2 years. Tell me one toughest moment when you felt like giving up, or did you at all?
So actually, I never felt like giving up, to be very honest and straight. But I think there were taxing moments in terms of where, there was a lot of exhilaration in terms of what was taking. There was a lot of anxiety which was there in terms of what's going on in the market. And yes, I think overall we were strategizing and re-strategizing in terms of how do we really get into this game far more strongly, given our strengths which have been for years to that extent. So yes, there were anxious moments in terms of what we were seeing, but I think we stood firm to our basically strategy and seeing in terms of how do we navigate through this entire storm which is coming.
But tell me, this is not the first time you faced competition. What was so different about the last competitor who joined the paints industry as opposed to what has happened in the past?
So when we look at it across, when you see over the years, what you said is right. We've had lots of competitors coming in and a lot of MNCs coming in to that extent, which is there. So we had Sherwin-Williams, which came in earlier. We have Jotun, Nippon, and so on and so forth. I think the difference here was that someone came and tried to basically look at, doing a very disruption by looking at a scale which was very, very big in terms of the sense. And someone possibly we felt that were not really bothered about the money they were burning in the sense in terms of what was going in the market. So I think it was what we saw, that there was a certain scale, there was a certain possibly ambitiousness from a point of view of really kind of disrupting the market from the point of view of the way they were kind of coming and so on and so forth. So I think it was more from the point of view of the scale in terms of what we saw it coming, and the fact that there was someone in the market who was really burning the money and not really bothered in terms of how will it kind of go in future.
Yeah. So would you say that is the biggest threat, the scale?
See, actually what we see is that there has been something which is nothing very different in terms of what we have seen. It is all Me Too in terms of whether it is the product range, whether it is service, whether it is in terms of the distribution, or whether it is from the plants. Because actually it is all people from Asian Paints only who have gone there to that extent. So from that point of view,
it's a compliment.
Yeah, it is.
It is a compliment.
It is. And that has always been in the industry. We have all people from Asian Paints all across to that extent. So I think from that point of view, there has been nothing different. But I think the only difference we felt was that the kind of, possibly discounting, the kind of possibly the burning of the money was something which
aggression,
was very,
basically.
It was very, very high to that extent. No, there can be aggression in marketing, there can be aggression in innovation, but it is aggression from a point of view of discounting in terms of what we saw, which was something which was very different in terms of what is there, and we felt that possibly it kind of just carried on for a while to that extent.
But does it work in your industry? Because continual discounting would then also mean quality suffers, right? Or does it not? I'm just trying to understand this better.
So actually I think that's a good point, because today if you look at it, our industry is not like an FMCG, okay? It's neither like a consumer durable, it is something in between. And at the same time, the consumer in a paint industry is coming for painting once in 5 years, okay? Unlike an FMCG industry where, I am buying every week, every day, every month kind of a zone, and I'm really interacting with the brand. So therefore, I think the difference in this industry, which I see, is that unless you have the capability of building the brand over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, it is very difficult for someone to really survive in the market, because your instant discounting, instant pricing will get you the current customer. Okay, the customer which is going to come literally the next year, you have to kind of really start looking at sustaining the same thing in terms of what you're doing with that customer, because the customer which is coming is totally different. So I think it's a very unique industry from that point of view, and therefore I think the name of the game in our industry is sustenance. Name of the game is really building the brand and looking at consistency in terms of your actions, in terms of what you're able to bring over a number of years to that extent. So I think industry per se requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of resilience in terms of what you need to kind of show. And therefore, whatever you do in the industry, one has to be very careful that from a point of view of medium to long term, you are able to really sustain your actions in terms of what you are taking to that extent. That is the only possibility that you will really survive in the industry.
So what did you do in the last 2 years to mitigate competition and maintain the dominance that Asian Paints has?
So actually, I think one of the big things which we did was that we stood our ground from our own strategy. We never ran in terms of looking at saying that we have to react. We looked at possibly standing firm onto our real kind of strategy which is there, and that was all about creating excellence. So right from the point of view of looking at brand, where we looked at creating our own brand excellence and really building the brand equity, because we felt that that is one area which the customer really trusts this brand. And we look at in terms of so many ways where you could kind of really say that Asian Paints continues to stay top of the mind of the customer as we kind of go. And therefore, the initiatives which we took were very many in terms of saying that you are reaching to the customer not in the conventional manner, you are looking at the customer very differently. And not only that, you are looking at the segmentation of today, which is the millennials, the Gen Zs, so very differently, so that today you are not just a legacy brand, but you are also a brand of the future in terms of what you're connecting with. So I think that was the one very big area in terms of what we appropriated. Along with that, I think we gave an impetus in terms of looking at our whole area of executional excellence, because that is one thing which Asian Paints has always been very proud of the way in terms of how we approach our distribution, our supply chain, our whole area of looking at how we work with technology. I think we really upped the ante on that in such a manner that we brought in more technology, we bettered our excellence from a point of view of how we service the market, we increased our reach from the point of view where we were to that extent, and that was the other area which we worked very, very strongly. The third big area which we did, we put the whole area of innovation in product to another anvil to that extent. We really revolutionized many of our products. We revolutionized, a lot of new products which we got into the market. So for example, we launched one product which is called Nilaya Arc, and that is right at the top end, which basically people can get textures of their choices in a very easy manner.
Some of which we saw,
and that also, which is absolutely green and eco. So it is something which is 90% organic and something which really appeals to people in a very different manner. And not only at the top end, we introduced something which is called the Neo Bharat, right at the grassroots level at the bottom, which revolutionized, and by using a new category which we introduced. There's always a category called distemper. We introduced a new category called latex, which came in. And that is something which no one had to that extent. So we definitely looked at innovation. We've, I think, got almost about, in the last 2.5 years, about 160 patents in terms of what we have put into the game, and really revolutionized the fact that today, if we are existing in the market, we are bringing innovation to the next level. For one example for that is we introduced a product called Aero Clean. Now this is the first kind of product in the world which actually absorbs SO2 and NO2 from the market, from the air, which is sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, from the air, and cleans the air. Okay, so in today's world...
Paint does that?
Yes.
Wow.
So for the first time we introduced that for large buildings, large complexes, gated societies, and so on and so forth. So these are just examples of the innovation. So actually I think we really appropriated excellence, whether it is from the brand, whether it is from the point of view of executional excellence, supply chain, our operational parameters, or from the point of view of introducing innovation in terms of our whole product regime which was there to that extent. So actually it was our own strategy which we kind of really stood very strongly onto, because we felt that this is something which we have been known in the market as leaders, and we need to kind of really stick to that philosophy rather than looking at saying that do we need to play with prices or discounts. We said that was not the game we wanted to play.
All this work, Amit, in 2 years because of new competition?
So actually, see, we accelerated the pace of work. Okay, while there's a lot of work which really happens, but we really put a lot of acceleration into this game, because I was personally involved in terms of seeing that today agility was the name of the game to that extent. And that is something which today we are not complacent even now. I think today this is a game which will continue. We will have more competition.
Was it like a wake-up call basically? Last 2 years?
I don't think so. No? I don't think so.
Okay.
It was just a call where we looked at saying what we were doing, possibly.
You need to do it faster, is what I mean.
That's it. So it was basically just accelerating the pace, because normally you will kind of pace up your stuff in the market in a certain way that is there. But we really kind of looked at saying that, what we call is, we brought in another word which is called accelerate. So you excel and you accelerate as well, and that is what we practiced.
You're not getting into autos, are you? I'm just kidding. But what is the one thing you think you could have done differently? You always had these plans, you were going to execute them, but in your own time. Like you said, in the last 2 years, because of competition, you only accelerated it. Is there something that you thought that maybe you could have done earlier, and then you didn't have to face this kind of heat in the last 2 years?
I think one thing which we felt was that, was there a better way we could kind of have, retained a lot of people who have been with Asian Paints, and they would have not really kind of gone in terms of looking at, and possibly it could have become even more difficult for the competition to kind of really copy everything and really bring it to the market to that extent. And we felt that possibly retention is something which we could have looked at much better in terms of how we could kind of do, and therefore now we have introduced a lot of initiatives which is around people as well, in terms of how do we nurture them, how do we kind of take them along as we really look at possibly the next decade.
Going forward now, there'll always be competition, as is the case with any industry. What do you think has been your learning in the last 2 years? What would you do differently to try and maybe not have to accelerate things which you're already on your drawing board?
So see, actually, in most of the areas I see across the world, I think technology is the biggest disruptor. Okay, so you see what's happening today in the AI world, so whether it was ChatGPT or DeepSea or, anything which is kind of coming today, it really is disrupting what is already there to that extent. So I think that's the paradigm in terms of what we are choosing, in terms of saying that if we have to always stay ahead of the market, if we have to really keep on making our mark, the whole area of the innovation excellence has to be our real strategy in terms of going forward. And therefore, in everything what we do, whether it is literally looking at forecasting, which is about really predicting in terms of how material will move in various parts of the country, whether we bring in a lot of technology there and look at that very differently, or you look at from the point of view of visualization. Today, customer is interested in two areas. One is visualization, the other is execution of what the person sees. And therefore, we are bringing a lot of AI into our visualization, so that if today you are coming from your home and you want to see that there is a certain wallpaper, there is a certain artifact, how would that possibly look into your space? So we could quickly in the next few minutes only construct your full house with that artifact, with that wallpaper, with that color, so that the visualization is something superb, because that would kind of aid faster decision making in terms of how it will happen, and also give a very different world to the customer, whether it is a new age customer or a legacy customer, in terms of how it is kind of coming in. So innovation, as I said, in terms of ops, innovation from the point of view of customers in terms of how we want to look at visualization, innovation from the point of view of technology platforms in terms of what we introduced. So as we are going ahead now, we are looking at saying that one of the big areas which Asian Paints is kind of taking up is inimitability. This is my own word in terms of what
I was wondering where have I heard this before.
So it's not
I haven't.
in the Oxford Dictionary yes. to that extent. But inimitability means that anything which we basically make, we are putting a number to it on a scale of 1 to 10 to see that something is not really replicable by any competition to that extent. And that's a big game in terms of what we want to play, that as we kind of go ahead, we would like to be different. We would like to be very different in terms of how we keep on disrupting this environment again and again in terms of going forward, because that's the name of the game which will keep you ahead. There is nothing else which can come in to that extent which is there, because when you look at all other areas today, there is no brand in the world which doesn't get copied. To that extent. So the whole area is shift the pace of innovation to such a level that the market is really looking at a brand, that this is the brand which is possibly, giving us something new always, and something which is really disrupting the market.
But how do you do that? How do you keep up pace like that no one's able to copy you and catch you?
So I think a lot of those areas is the passion you build in terms of your people, because I think one of the things which keep people alive and really making things happen is the fact that the zeal to kind of come out with something different. I think one of the things which in the organization which we are really rewarding people is that today people who are doing things differently, people who are bringing a lot of innovation, is something we look at those people very differently in terms of what they are doing. And therefore the idea is that in terms of leadership also we talk of people who are looking at changing the game completely to that extent. So I think it's a part of a lot of culture building in terms of what we are looking at, saying that, and it is also something which is also a question of survival as I see it, okay, because we've got into a certain stature that today we have been leaders in the market for a very long time, and we would like to kind of see that what all we keep on doing, so that on the basis of the strength of people, on the basis of the strength of new technology which you appropriate, we are able to kind of see that we bring in this kind of fervor which always makes us stand apart in the market.
So people and technology, is that the answer to stay number one in the race?
Those are one of the, because obviously there is a lot of other areas which will come into in terms of this game, because today, for instance, one of the big areas is the whole area of brand building. Okay, because today one thing which is really staying with the people is really the essence of the brand in terms of what is there. So one of the things which I always see is that Asian Paints is a brand which has always stood for homes, okay? And when you talk of home today across the industry, across the world, actually Asian Paints really stand apart. And we felt that that is something which is the brilliance which we did in early 2000 when we got the whole area of Har Ghar.
Yeah.
Okay. And Har Ghar really stands out because today, while a lot of other companies, other brands speak of, a lot of rational parameters. It could be whiteness, it could be, your crack bridging, it could be about smoothness, stain. But we speak of saying that the whole area of the emotional energy which goes in terms of making the home, we want to own that emotional energy. And that is why the Har Ghar as part of our brand building is so very big in terms of all our marketing efforts in terms of what we do. So for instance, today, even outside the paint industry, when you look at other brands, okay, seldom you find that there are brands which are really able to appropriate home very, very strongly. Okay, so you, for instance, you see possibly an IKEA or a Fab India kind of coming and appropriating home to that extent. But I think that's a nuance where today we have chosen emotional connect as a very strong route, and that also looking at from the point of view of the entire segmentation which possibly is interacting with the paint to that extent. So it's not about people who have now retired, people who are possibly now leading an old age life, to the people who are kind of coming in, the Gen Zs, the, as you kind of look at the Gen Alpha in terms of what come in, I think you are talking of more and more things which is getting into one area of looking at the brand connect which comes in. And therefore, as we kind of keep on building the brand, one of the big things which we are invoking there is how can we look at hyper-personalization, okay? When I say hyper-personalization, it is about customizing to the requirement to each segment to that extent. For example, when we look at a Gen Z today, a Gen Z thrives in maximalization, okay? And therefore, and then there is another segment which is talking absolutely minimalistic in terms of which you want to be to that extent. Now, how do you look at basically marrying this kind of hyper-personalization when you are offering your products to this kind of segmentation? So that's, I think, a big area in terms of how we are operating, because at the end of it, as we kind of go ahead, we are looking at saying that parameters like top of the mind awareness, parameters like saying that consideration to buy, okay, would always come tops with us, or even in terms of the share of search in the digital economy. You are the tops in terms of how you come into that extent. So I would say that apart from lot many other things which we are doing, I think the brand building and really keeping our heads high from the point of view of relationship with homes and really keep on building that brand, I think would be a very, very big idea. And that is why you see this space also coming up. Okay, because just on the strength of paint, I can't just own the home.
Yeah.
The idea is that is why the whole transition which we looked at from the share of surface to the share of spaces. And that, I think, is the essence, saying that if the customer today is aligning with Asian Paints strongly, then why can't you really own the customer through the different life stages of the brand?
But Amit, everything that you talked about, be it brand building, brand recall, technology, people, all of this is very, very Capex heavy. Are you ready for it at Asian Paints?
Again, when you look at from the point of view of excellence, I think cost excellence is also one of our very big areas in terms of what we are working. When I say cost excellence, one of the areas is that today our industry has almost about 57 contribution which comes from the material cost to that extent. So I think one of the bigger areas of working with technology is that whatever we are talking of bringing into the market, we also talk of a cost excellence in terms of what comes in. So the moment you look at cost excellence, it gives us a lot of areas which we are able to play with when we look at the whole area of cost reductions which come in. And not only that, we are also looking at seeing how we can harness the whole world of technology from the point of view of increasing productivity in a very big way. And that is something which gives strength to a brand of this stature in terms of what we are trying to build. And as we go ahead, I think we have unleashed in the last about 5 years now, a lot many areas, what we term as the backward integration today. Okay, so we have opened now a white cement plant in Fujairah in Dubai. We are opening a very, very big plant of almost about 3,000 crores investment in terms of really making emulsion, which is what is the next gen emulsion in terms of what we call. There are only about
which is what?
four operators in the world who have that technology, and we are going to be the first in India in terms of what we are going to do. And this is a next gen emulsion which we call, which has very low VOC, which means that it is very green. It has no smell. It can give very special properties to the paint in terms of what is there, and it comes at a very low cost. So it has all the parameters in terms of what we can look at in terms of defining our next 10 to 20 years in terms of what we will do to that extent. So therefore, the whole area of backward integration is something which is going to really give us a cushion from a point of view of really seeing that the margins which we are trading on, we kind of really build on that and really see that all these investments which we are going to make as we kind of go forward, we also get a cushion in terms of cost excellence, as well as from the point of view of the backward integration in terms of what we are putting in, which will keep on giving us the energy and cushion to really keep on going as we go ahead with all these initiatives.
So in the next 5 years, if I were to ask you what is in the investment pipeline, what kind of margins do you foresee, and what your individual segments are going to perform like, do you have a fair idea right now?
Yeah, so for example, we've last 3 years, we have already spoken of almost unleashing out a Capex which is more than 8,000 crores in terms of what we've done. We're putting up another plant in central India near Indore, which is coming up, which would be another investment of about 2,000 crores in terms of what we are putting. So as we are looking at possibly a growth trajectory. We are looking at investments which are coming. At the same time, we are looking at in terms of how do we kind of really see that the area of gross margins, the area of PBTIT margins, how do we kind of really see that we are in a certain band so that we really see that the return to the shareholders is something which is strong in terms of as a brand we can give.
Which is what you've not given me any numbers.
So PBTIT margins, we have been speaking about 18 to 20, and that is something which we are maintaining, and that is what is our
which is by when?
So we are currently in the same band, and we want to retain the same band as we kind of go in the next 5 years as well in terms of looking at it. And therefore all these initiatives in terms of what I spoke of will really help us in terms of seeing that we are able to get and retain this band of 18 to 20% in terms of what we are speaking of.
So if I were to ask you next 5 to 10 years, what would Asian Paints look like? What would be the growth engine? Would it be B2B, services, will continue decorative, or maybe some new segment? So a lot of things are changing as we see. Yeah, it's very dynamic world right now.
First of all, as we see it, the whole classification of the industry is changing. Today, when we look at the classification of retail and industrial, okay, that itself is changing. The industrial business seems to be growing at a much higher pace as we see it, and it is definitely at a pace which is about 4 to 5 percentage points higher than what the decorative industry is kind of going to that extent. And that is also happening because of the fact that today there is larger infrastructure investment which is taking place in the company. There's larger private Capexes which are coming today in the country, the way it is kind of going to that extent. And therefore the industrial decorative ratios themselves are changing. That's point one. Second, what we are seeing is that the whole B2B market is something which is really expanding at a very, very different pace. And that is also led through the fact that today the kind of monies which the government is spending with respect to overall infrastructure, I think it's really giving the boost in terms of what's really happening, and that's something which is fueling the whole component of B2B along with industrial, as you're saying. So today I think some of those percentages as we kind of go are going to change overall the whole flavor of the market, and we feel that today, given this kind of a change which is happening, Next 5 years, we have kind of put a lot of imperatives in terms of what we are doing from a point of view of our industrial strategy and what we are really gallivanting and looking at in terms of our B2B strategy as well to that extent. So while the whole area of decorative retail would basically remain as a very, very strong essence of our existence, we would really see that we are able to grow these two areas much more strongly in terms of what we do, so that today we are able to catch the right signals of growth to that extent. And therefore I would say that as we kind of go ahead, possibly the contributions today each of these businesses make, those would kind of change in the next 5 to 10 years to that extent, which will come in. And therefore one of the big strategy here is that how do you kind of look at pacing out your investments in terms of these areas as we kind of go ahead, so that at the end of 5-10 years you are not left behind in these areas as you kind of go ahead.
But tell me, you did talk about B2B. What about discretionary spends? With all the measures that the government is taking, is it really picking up with that kind of pace? Because you would have a clear pulse of it.
So I think when we look at from the point of view of government spending, whether it is spending with respect to the bridges, the highways, the roads, airports, defense, railways, I think that is something which is really growing at a very, very strong pace, and that is really fueling a lot of growth to that extent. When it comes to possibly the whole area of housing, okay, what we are finding is that there are different trends happening there. So for example, the trend at luxury and premium, I think is growing much faster as compared to possibly the mid and the lower end to that extent. The whole advent of second homes, for example, is growing at a very scorching pace today in terms of what we can see, and therefore the whole segment of premium and luxury will grow much faster in our opinion as compared to possibly the eco and the smart segment in terms of which is there. And therefore I think today that is a sector which we need to kind of really capitalize and catch on, and that's why a lot of work in terms of whether it is from the point of view of products, whether it is from the point of view of services in terms of what we are doing, because one of the big things which, as I said, industrial and B2B also is going to change is the entire service industry. Okay, services today we know are going to become very, very big. We have a service which is called the Beautiful Home Painting Service, which is there, which is the world's largest painting service.
And you can marry so much tech with it.
Yeah. So, and we are putting a lot of technology into it to that extent, but that is something which is literally your arsenal to reach out every home in a very hyper-personalized manner to that extent, and really kind of expand your share into the homes in terms of what you can really offer to the customer to that extent. So what we see is that these would be some of the trendings in terms of from the point of view, construction in this country will go on, housing will always be there to that extent. It's just that possibly the nuances of that housing will keep on changing as we kind of go into future. For example, the whole area of hospitality is going to be very, very big, because today one of the big growth drivers is travel and hospitality.
Yeah, tourism.
Okay, and if that develops, which means that many more chains will come into India of hotels, many more eateries will come, and so on and so forth. So today I think hospitality becomes a very big area of investment which is there, which we need to kind of go after. So I think how the paradigm is changing is that it's just not about conventional home marketing now. It's about owning homes, which is in the paradigm of smart homes to premium to luxury homes. It is about owning the whole game of B2B, which is about the factories, the government sector, the whole private Capex-led hospitality business to that extent. It is about the core industrial business, which is about catering to the auto, the two-wheelers market, to some of those industries in terms of how you would like to kind of cater to. And therefore, really segmenting the whole strategy going forward, which is just not based in terms of saying that I need to focus largely in terms of just the retail business.
You could have a Nilaya hotel actually. Have Sabya design it for you.
So today we have actually, you would be surprised that today Nilaya is our brand for wallpapers. Okay, So there is Nilaya by Sabyasachi, which is there, which is for the luxury segment. But we have Nilaya, which is our wallpaper brand, which is in the premium segment as well. And that basically gets sold across possibly, more than 3,000 outlets across the country to that extent. We also have basically, as I said, we have a brand called Nilaya Arc, which is a luxury brand in terms of what we have introduced. And we have Nilaya Furnishings now, which is there. So
you have everything that it takes to get into hospitality, since you're so bullish on that sector.
Absolutely.
But tell me, we're from India, and in India where there is a pink city, there's the Jodhpur blue. From what I gather is that the Bharat, not the India, not the Mumbai as we know it, not the Nilaya consumer, is still struggling. Is that the correct derivative or understanding?
So see, I think some of these things we have seen some cyclicity in terms of what is there. Yes, I think the last 2 years we have seen definitely a slowdown, whether it is the rural markets, even in terms of the urban centers, and that is a trend which we are seeing with FMCG industries as well. So it's not only about discretionary spend, it is also about your regular spend in terms of what is there on food and other things which is happening. So I believe that I think it's a little bit of a cycle where also some consumption trends are shifting a little bit to that extent. I think today there was a time when people were relegated to their homes during the COVID period. So homes became a prime area of investments in a very, very big way. Now, as people are evolving today, second homes becoming very big, travel becoming very big. So the whole area of consumption is also changing, and I think this is how trends would move to that extent. And there is a cyclicity like a fashion trend which would happen today, that possibly some of these areas will keep on moving in that direction. But we feel that with the kind of population which we have, the kind of consumption in terms of the need of housing which we have, this will always remain a sector which is very popular, which is always green from a point of view in terms of saying that growths would always be there in this sector as we kind of go ahead. And I think more and more players will also come in as we go ahead.
But your margins will come from the premium segment, right?
Largely, yes. And that is something which we are growing as we see. In that pyramid, we continue to grow the premium luxury, and therefore upgradation is a very big strategy in terms of what we are taking.
So next 10 years, what's the personal journey going to be like?
So I think the personal journey always has been of great passion, okay? And the passion is that you can never rest. Okay, keep walking, and not only walking, keep running in terms of a very big way. So I think that's the journey, and keep on looking at saying, how can you really embrace technology very, very strongly. The whole world of now AI, the way it is coming, whole world in terms of looking at revolutionizing the world in terms of newer usages which you can give. For example, years back we started the whole area of waterproofing as a new area in terms of what is coming in. So keep on really saying that you are a category creator, keep on creating something which is new, and my personal aim would be that always keep on giving surprises and great kind of experimentations in the market, so that possibly it's a brand which people look up to, it's a brand which people foresee as something which is really like a shining beacon which possibly get always inspired by.
So not just share of space, but share of mind and heart as well, right?
That's right, because that's the game which is there, because one of the aspirations which we have is that Asian Paints would like to be an integral part of the consumer decor life cycle. So right from the point of view of any consumer renting out a home, to buying a home, to renovating a home, to the second home, to the kids' home, we would like to be part of that entire decor life cycle. And that is what possibly is one of our dreams as we kind of go ahead, that we continuously keep on being with the consumer of every segment as we go ahead, because that's the brand in terms of what we want to really build as we look at the next 100 years.
It is indeed. And here's to sprinting. Good luck with that. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.